Erin Ogunkeye joins me on the set for today's press review. Hi, Erin.
Hi, Gina.
You're going to start with reaction to the terrorist attack in Burkina Faso.
Yeah, that's right. With at least 160 people killed, it is being described as among the country's worst massacres ever committed against civilians. Now, for French paper La Croix, it has left Burkinabés, quote, resigned in the face of what many view as the government's unclear strategy against rising incidences of terrorist attacks in the country. Now, a look at the reactions from Burkina Faso, from Burkinabe papers, does seem to give weight to that claim, Jeannie. I'll start with the Burkinabe news website, Wakat Sera, which asks its readers what is the point of national mourning or declarations condemning the attacks if at the end of the day the government has visibly lost all control over the situation. Now, this editorial piece is calling for an end to whining and concludes that it's time to make concrete changes like strengthening Burkina Faso's intelligence services and also pushing for more inclusive development programs in order to make it less likely that the country's youth turns to militant groups. Now, news site Le Pays, for its part, blames the malaise of Burkina Faso's military. They're saying that faced with so many failures, the military really needs to restore its honor and can do so by tracking down militants. The daily Sidwaya, however, Jeannie, has a completely different perspective. They're saying it's really time to move beyond bitterness towards the country's government, towards the country's military, and really start to strengthen both national and regional unity. The paper says that all African countries, especially in this Western region, that are facing an uptick in terrorism really need to join together to prioritize homegrown solutions and to prioritize mutually beneficial partnerships.
Erin, you've got another story for us now from the U.S. where the President Joe Biden has published an op-ed piece in an American paper outlining his objectives for this week's G7 summit.
Joe Biden published, indeed, in the Washington Post, the American paper, and he made his objectives very clear. The title is "My Trip to Europe is about rallying the world's democracies." Now, he says that he wants to focus on ensuring that market democracies in the U.S., Europe, and not China or anybody else write the rules around trade and democracy. He also is really reiterating how important he thinks it is to strengthen a U.S.-European front against what he describes as Russian aggression. Now, he says that these are really the defining issues of our time. He ends the piece by wondering whether or not democratic alliances that have shaped so much of the past century are going to prove that they're able to come together, show their capacity against modern-day threats and adversaries. He says that the answer is yes, and that this week Europe will have the chance to prove it.
Erin, critics, though, are saying that Biden should be facing threats to democracy in his own country.
Yeah, that's the gist of a Guardian piece published on Monday in response to Biden's op-ed. Now, the title is "Biden Trumpets Democracy Abroad" in a post-op-ed as threats spread at home. The idea, as it suggests, being that that the U.S. is kind of claiming to be a leader for democracy in the world, but that they're facing serious threats within their own country. Now, the paper calls out a series of recent Republican-led bills to restrict voting rights throughout the United States and to make it even possible to overturn election results in some cases. The piece also cites Republicans blocking a bipartisan commission to investigate the attack on the U.S. Capitol as examples of things that really need to be confronted at home.
You got another story for us now from Germany, where Angela Merkel's CDU party is claiming victory against the far right.
The local elections in Saxony-Anhalt were largely viewed as the last major test for Merkel's Christian Democratic Union Party ahead of September's nationwide elections. Now, while some feared that the AfD, the far-right party, would make gains, that didn't happen. The CDU actually improved on its 2017 score by grabbing 37% of the vote, while the AfD actually lost support, even though it still came in second with 21%. Now, for German paper Der Spiegel, the victory is not necessarily one for the CDU party, but really for the party's state premier, Rainer Haseloff. Now, the paper says that the chancellor candidate, Armin Laschet, really needs to be careful to draw the right conclusions with this victory. It argues that the next hopeful leader of Germany is still kind of lacking a solid, concrete election program. He's too often kind of on the defensive against the AfD, which this paper says isn't really enough, given that the party has now kind of proven that they're not necessarily going to be a major threat for the general elections. Der Tagesspiegel, for its part, draws a much different conclusion. This piece says that while the AfD did indeed fall short of winning the election, election, it still did manage to become the second strongest force in German politics there yet again. The political scientist quoted in this piece shows that these results show that AfD is strong, that it's not just a temporary force, it's kind of here to stay. And the paper says all the more so because the party achieved these results, even though their discourse this time around was kind of increasingly radical. This paper says not only on immigration, but also on the coronavirus, kind of peddling conspiracy theories, pushing for liberalizing gun laws, and more importantly, as this article says, using state funds to support art that is, quote, fundamentally positive to German culture. They're saying that these are all signs that the party is really moving even further to the right.
Erin, you're going to wrap up now here in France, where the National Assembly is set to discuss extending the right to medically assisted procreation.
Absolutely. After 4 years of back and forth, hundreds of amendments, debates, Emmanuel Macron's government is actually hoping to extend access to lesbians and single women by the end of its mandate in 2022. Now, though the proposed bill is expected to be adopted by the Senate in the end of June, Libération, the French paper, says that there is still a lot of tension surrounding it. It says, on the one hand, 80 members of the right-wing Republican Party have asked the government to delay the text in 2022. They really feel like it's being rushed. They want to add amendments. There's still some things many things that they do not at all support. And on the other hand, rights groups and lawmakers from more left-wing parties are saying that the bill doesn't go far enough. Jeannie, they say that the text is silent on the case of post-mortem procreation, which would allow for the insemination of a widow with a recently deceased partner's sperm, and they say that the bill is not expected to include transgender people in terms of giving them access to medically assisted procreation. They're saying that this is all the more paradoxical given that as of 2016, transgender people can change their official status on administrative documents, so they're saying that really should be completed by allowing them to have children.
Erin Ogunkay, thank you so much for that press review.